How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network as we welcome you back for our hashtag Panther Nation Season 3 Week 14 recap show. The Panthers coming off an unbelievable 40-33 overtime come from behind victory against the Miami Hurricanes, led on the backs of 3 rushing touchdowns from Darren Hall, 2 rushing touchdowns from Quadri Olesen, the game-winning touchdown in overtime by Hall. The Panthers at one point were down 27-3 to the Hurricanes. They came back from 24 points down, tied the score with just seconds to play in the fourth quarter, and then scored a touchdown in overtime and stopped Miami on fourth down. Huge sack by Elijah Zeiss to win the game. Not the Panthers' prettiest effort. They actually were outgained. Miami had 500 yards of total offense. The Panthers, a typical performance, 200-plus rushing yards. Kenny Pickett with a solid 180-plus passing yards. A couple of turnovers, though, from the Panthers. 1 fumble and interception from Pickett. But 5 rushing touchdowns, some big defensive stops when they needed them, and enough to get the job done. Pickett, you can see 259 passing yards. Actually, I was way off on that. It was 259 passing yards for the Panthers, and actually a lower rushing total than we're usually accustomed to, about 180 yards on the ground. Olesen had 116 yards. Hall only 54 yards, one of his lower outputs for the season, 4.5 a carry, but he did have 3 touchdowns. Rafael Araujo-Lopes, one of his big games of the season since his 6-catch opening day performance, but 4 catches for 57 yards for him. Trey Tipton, of course, the huge catch in the fourth quarter on the final drive, 61 yards. That's what set up the Olesen touchdown run that tied things. Paul Lease also was a big help for the Panthers on 2-point conversions, as they did very well there. Salim Brightwell had a big day for the Panthers, 8 tackles, 3 for a loss, and a sack. Quell Hampshire, the redshirt freshman, actually had his first career interception on the day. 4 sacks for the Panthers. Wolfgang Zeiss, Hendricks, and Brightwell each with 1. And, of course, Zeiss had the big one that clinched the game. So, overall, for the Panthers, it's one of those games where, against a very tough Miami team, they were resilient. They held in there. The defense stepped up when it needed to. Obviously, not the best game that they've had all season, but they did exactly what they needed to when they needed to. So a great game from the Panthers defensively, really strong performance. The offense did as well as they could have. I mean, he scored 40 points offensively. They were aided by 2 very good returns late on in the game by Maurice French, who, interestingly enough, was actually very bad on returns for the majority of the game, but he did pick up 2 really good ones late in the game. 400-plus yards passing against for the 3rd straight game. But when you've won all 3 of those games, there's really not too many things to write home about in terms of bad results. Miami did have a good rushing attack. Walton actually had a nice day, 90-plus yards on the ground, so a good game for him. But the Panthers, they knew Shariff was going to throw it all over the field, but they did a great job just limiting his options, shutting him down, especially late in the second half. And making stops when they needed to. So it's a huge victory for the Panthers. It means they'll be back in the ACC championship game for the 2nd time in 3 years. Pat Narduzzi said, "See you in Charlotte," and the Panthers held up that end of the bargain. A great performance by Pitt. Really a win that should give them a ton of confidence and hopefully lead them into, they avenged their loss to Miami from last year. Now they're going to look to avenge their loss to Clemson in the ACC championship game 2 years ago. So it's a game that's 2 years in the making for the Panthers, and one they'll really be looking forward to. Some other big games around the ACC. Georgia beat Georgia Tech by a field goal in overtime. Virginia Tech beat Virginia, so the Cavaliers will not be going bowling this season. They finished 5-7 after I think they started 5-2. So bad luck for them. Boston College wins out to finish 8-4. Syracuse 2-10, really poor season. It'd be tough to see if their coach Dino Baber sticks around. Florida State wins 36-30 over Florida. NC State blows out Wake Forest. They finish with a 9-3 regular season. Really good performance there. Clemson does just escape South Carolina 35-31, so they'll head into the ACC championship game at 10-2 on, I believe, a 7-game or 8-game winning streak. North Carolina beats Duke. Neither of them are going bowling. And then Louisville, huge huge performance, 42-17 victory over Wisconsin. Lamar Jackson with an unbelievable game that could put him right back into the thick of the Heisman race. Around the NCAA, Washington finishes their undefeated regular season by beating Washington State. Vanderbilt knocks off ranked BYU, so big upset there. Penn State blows out Indiana 31-6. Tennessee clinches the SEC East with a victory over Kentucky, which means Georgia at 11-1 will not be going to the SEC championship game. Middle Tennessee State just escapes Marshall. Michigan State blows out Rutgers. Ohio State finishes their regular season 11-1 with a victory over Michigan, so they're going to the Big Ten championship game. Arkansas State beats UL Lafayette 37-24. Oklahoma blows out Baylor 42-13. They go to 11-0. UCLA stays unbeaten, beating USC. And just to look at that again, USC finishes the regular season 0-12. I don't think they've ever had a winless regular season. They do now. Oklahoma State knocks off TCU. Bama blows out Auburn. Big game for Jalen Hurts in that one, 44-10 for the Crimson Tide. LSU 34-0 over Arkansas. They finish their regular season unbeaten to head into the SEC championship game. Houston knocks off Tulsa, and Texas blows out Kansas State 38-13. Notre Dame escapes Stanford to finish 11-1 and make their claim to get into the college football playoff. And of course, Louisville, like we mentioned, blows out Wisconsin. Lamar Jackson, huge day for him. 345 yards passing, 78 yards on the ground, 5 total touchdowns in the victory. And Gary McCray forced a fumble, recovered that fumble, had a sack as well, 6 tackles, 2 for a loss. NCAA and ACC Players of the Week for the two of them. And Jackson, you can see with that performance, goes up to number 1 in the Heisman race. He could win it, but Geis, who's right behind him, will be playing in the SEC championship game. Moore from Cincinnati, the quarterback, will be playing in the American Conference championship game. And Joe Burrow from Ohio State will be playing in the Big Ten championship game. So 3 guys that have one more game that they can put on their resume to potentially up their Heisman candidacy and come away with a victory there. But Jackson looks like the favorite as it stands right now. Now, around the country, this is where things have really heated up. The regular season is essentially over for everybody except Oklahoma. They have one more game at Oklahoma State. Of course, big rivalry matchup there, but undefeated-wise, LSU's finished regular season undefeated. Washington, UCLA are undefeated as well. Oklahoma, if they win, you'll have 4 undefeateds at the end of the regular season. But LSU, Washington, UCLA will be in their conference championship games. Notre Dame and Georgia cannot because Notre Dame's independent. Georgia's not in a conference. But Clemson, Ohio State, and Pitt, as well as Tennessee at number 11, all will be in conference championship games. And if they win, they'll have stated their claim to potentially earn a college football playoff bid. We've got Middle Tennessee State will be in a conference championship as well. Arkansas State still has a game to play. Houston's 11-1. They'll be in a conference championship game. So you got a lot of teams as well that could have a say as group of 5 teams trying to get into the New Year's 6. So it's going to be a really hectic final 2 weeks of the season with Week 15 coming up and then the conference championship games. And of course, like we mentioned, LSU probably will be in even if they lose the SEC. Oklahoma, if they beat Oklahoma State, they'll finish 12-0. They'll definitely be in. The winner of Washington and UCLA for sure is going to be in. And then it comes down to you got Notre Dame, you got Georgia, you got Pitt or Clemson, you got Ohio State, you got Tennessee. Any of those teams could win their conference and potentially stake their claim to be in the conference, the college football playoff. And you can see Pitt 7-1 wins the ACC Coastal for the second time in 2 years. They're 11-1, and just like 2 years ago, they'll be taking on a Clemson team that is incredibly strong. They don't have Deshaun Watson at quarterback anymore. Kelly Bryant, who's not necessarily as dynamic of a thrower, but he can run, he can move around, can make plays if need be. And Clemson's defense is arguably more talented than they've ever been. And it's really going to be something for the Panthers to contend with. It's going to be an absolutely delightful game. But before we can get to those games, we have to get through Week 15 here. So bowl projections as we head into Week 15. Feel free to pause it at any point and take a look at how your favorite team is doing as we show you where all the bowl projections are as we go into Week 15 and then Conference Championship Week. We will have a Conference Championship Week preview following this one, so that'll be a separate episode, so of course stay tuned for that before we get to the Pitt-Clemson game. We'll have to preview it and get you hyped up and as ready as I am. Right now, the Panthers projected to take on Arkansas State in the Orange Bowl as the ACC champion, taking on at-large school. Clemson actually has the better matchup. They're projected to play Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl as at-large is. Pitt's already played Notre Dame, of course, this season. Oklahoma and Georgia in the Fiesta Bowl. Ohio State, UCLA in the Rose Bowl. Washington, LSU in the National Championship. Now, that would be if we were following the typical BCS. We will not be. We'll have a college football playoff, so 2 of those bowl games will be playoff games, and then, of course, the National Championship game that we'll see. But some big games around the country that have to take place this week. Texas looks to finish off their season strong, taking on West Virginia. Will be a big game. Texas State looks to knock off number 12 Arkansas State. The Red Wolves looking to get into a BCS/New Year's Six game for the second year in a row. If they win, they more than likely will be able to. The Army-Navy game we know is always a big matchup. This is Army can't go bowling as they'll only finish with a max of 5 wins, so this is essentially their bowl game here. You got TCU, Kansas State's a big game. Oklahoma looking to finish with an undefeated regular season, taking on Oklahoma State. Number 1 scoring offense in the country, number 3 total offense, number 8 defense as well. So Oklahoma looks like the complete package, and they're going to be a real test for anybody that faces them should they win here and make the college football playoffs. So those are the big games to look for in Week 15. Let us know who you think is going to make the college football playoff. Of course, we can talk more about that in the next episode when we get to the conference championship preview. But you got LSU, you got Washington, you got UCLA, you got your Panthers, you have Oklahoma, Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, all of those teams making their case to get into the college football playoff. Let me know who you think is going to be in, and we'll see you in the next episode. As always, hail to Pitt. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.